Hey guys, James here. Today, back with a video. We're doing a review today of this monkey attributed to Ch-Eng, but actually written by this guy called Arthur Waley. It's a translation and abridgment of Journey to the West, which is like a famous classical Chinese mythology story. It's kind of like a fantasy thing. It's kind of based on real events. It's a bit all over the place. So, Journey to the West, quite a famous story, influential in a lot of ways, very traditional hero's journey kind of thing, as the name would imply. It's about this monk called Tripitaka, who goes on a journey from China all the way to India on foot in order to bring back scriptures written by the Buddha, who's obviously like a big god. You've probably heard of Buddha. He's joined along his way by a disciple in the form of a sentient talking monkey demigod god thing called Sun Wukong, known in this version just as Monkey. And basically it's a journey of enlightenment and enrichment in his life. This is an abridgment of that, because the original text, I believe, is somewhere in the realm of like 1,500 to 2,000-ish pages long. So there have been a few attempts throughout the years to try and cut that down and make it a more accessible kind of read for people. And this is one of the more famous adaptations of it. And I was very lukewarm on this particular adaptation, abridgment kind of thing. So let's talk about why. So the meat and potatoes of the story are kind of there in this book, but I think it has a lot of pacing problems that come as a result of the attempt to abridge the work, and it loses a lot of its meaning and sort of thematically throughout as a result of that. So the beginning of the book focuses purely on Monkey, and I think this book, this version, obviously titled Monkey, very much so wanted to focus more on Sun Wukong than it did on Tripitaka and sort of his teachings and sort of experiences along his journey. It's more about Monkey's story to enlightenment, but it loses itself in the second act, and we'll go into that. So the story opens with quite a large chunk of the book. Like this version is, I think it's about 300 or so pages. The first 100 pages are devoted basically to Monkey's origin story. He is born out of a stone, becomes a stone monkey, and then becomes a real monkey, and then transcends to heaven and does all sorts of shenanigans. The beginning of it is very entertaining. It's kind of anime as fuck. This book, like Journey to the West, was a very big influence on like Dragon Ball, and therefore a big influence on shonen anime in general. And you kind of get that feel from this. Like there's a lot of grandiose battles and fights with super powerful enemies, and the escalation is there for the beginning, and then it sort of slows down as it cuts to Tripitaka, and we get some chapters of his origin story, and then we get to the journey itself, and the journey itself is where the book started to really lose me. The point of the journey in Journey to the West is, you know, you go along this road from China to India. They face like demonic entities that are trying to lead them off the path and all of that kind of stuff. Tripitaka gets kidnapped a whole lot by these sort of monstrous enemies, and basically they overcome their foes mainly through violence. And this is sort of where abridging a work that's this long really sort of loses its way, because from what I understand, in the actual story there's a lot more sort of personal character development for Tripitaka and Monkey and like the other disciples that join them. There's a dragon that becomes a horse and there's a pig demon called Pigsy, and there's like a river guardian called Sandy, and they are like the main travelling party. As far as I understand, these characters sort of grow and develop along the journey by following Tripitaka's teachings and him changing the way they perceive threats and stuff like that. In this book, you don't really get that, because what happens is you move very quickly from set piece to set piece, like encounter to encounter, but you don't get a lot of that downtime in between where characters would be learning things or changing the way they think and growing along this sort of path to enlightenment. And as a result of that, by the time you get to the end, it just sort of seems like it was out of nowhere. Like, you get the beginning where Monkey is like a troublesome rebel guy, and then at the end he's grown, like he's completed his arc where he's become transcendent and a true Buddhist follower. But you don't have that connection in the middle of where he would learn to do that. Like, there's a lot of murder. There's a lot of murder that Monkey commits, and I guess you could say that he did it to bad people. But I don't know. I feel like Monkey's immediate response to situations doesn't change throughout the second act. Like, he's very much the same at the end of the second act as he is when we see him at the end of the first act, and then we start the third act only to find that he's now completely changed. And that is probably because there's a lot of stuff that's missing from the adaptation. Like, there's obviously a lot of fat being cut out of this, but I don't think a lot of that was fat. I think we lose a lot of like the good meat of what we want from this kind of story. So we kind of lose a lot of that. Tripitaka kind of becomes a background character in his own story. He doesn't really do anything of any note. He doesn't impart wisdom really at any point. He just sort of is a MacGuffin for most of the story. And I get that there's probably a lot of that in actual Journey to the West, but I feel his character there is likely to be more of a teacher, like mentor figure for Monkey. And we don't see that side of him too much in this adaptation. The writing style is very energetic. It moves very quickly from piece to piece. It's got a kind of whimsical fairy tale kind of nature to it. It's an interesting read, and I mean, does it pique my interest to read the rest? I mean, probably not. I mean, I've never really got on too well with classics, and I don't know what it is about me that just doesn't. I can't grok with that old kind of writing style. It's kind of stuffy to me. It doesn't have a lot of the narrative conventions, I guess, that I'm used to from reading more modern literature. Literature's grown a lot in the last however many hundreds of years it's been since these stories were written, and I think classics just lose something for me because of that. Like, it's like returning to an older time where I'm like, okay, I can see the origins of what would grow into the things that I love now, but I don't love it in its infant form, if that makes any sense. So ultimately, Monkey by Wu Cheng-un and Arthur Waley, 3 out of 5. It's okay. Like, it's probably worth looking into if you're interested in Easter. If you're a fan now of like Asian inspired fantasy, this is really like the point where that kind of like that tradition kind of started from here and grew. So it's worth a look back if you're that kind of person who likes sort of going historically back into things that have come before and seeing where things have developed from. Definitely worth a look. But I mean, as a standalone novel, would I rate it as like, oh, this is my all-time favorite? Absolutely not. I mean, I think it suffers a lot in its adaptation, and there are probably better versions out there. So I mean, do your research if you're interested in Journey to the West as a concept. I mean, do your research, maybe think about what would be the best version for you. There are unabridged versions out there, of course, if you fancy diving straight into that massive tome. But yeah, for me, not a hit. I can see where it was coming from. I just don't think this particular version stuck the landing. So that's all from me today. Join me in the next video where we'll be doing probably something else, probably another review. I'll see you next time, and until then, whatever, bye.